Howdy, folks. It's Tuesday. We are going to talk about Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final and a number of other things happening in the NHL. A lot of news, a lot of interesting stuff. But we're going to start with our pre-show. Peter first, because I just had lunch, so I'll talk about food.
So I was away for a little bit, a long planned trip with my wife and my stepbrother and my brother-in-law to go visit them in San Francisco. And part of the deal was we were going up to Napa for the weekend. So we went up on Friday, and months ago, we were able to secure a reservation at one of the few 3 Michelin-starred restaurants in the world called the French Laundry, which is owned and operated and founded by very renowned chef Thomas Keller. He has another restaurant in New York City called Per Se. This has sort of been a bucket list thing for my wife and I, and needless to say, that was a meal we will never ever forget, and we will never do again. I'm trying to find a way to put, like, Canada has its sort of own eBay thing. It's called Kijiji. I probably have to put a kidney up on there to pay for my credit card.
I was going to ask, without prying too much, what the rate was for.
No, don't ask. No, don't do
that. No. Let's just say no sane individual does this. Okay.
Anyways, I love food. I'm sure I would love the meal, but I would get eater's remorse. I would.
Yeah, I had some eater's remorse. I still do.
Well,
now the interesting thing about it is you don't know what the menu is before you're going. It's a set menu. It's sort of curated each day.
No control over it. That's the other problem with me is I have so many of these food quirks. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, but you go, like, you don't go to this without putting your quirks aside, knowing that you're getting, like, that's how it works. Anyways, the funniest part of it all was we had all these different things, and it was amazing. And then your cheese thing came. So part of it is after your main courses and stuff, you get a cheese thing before the sweets.
A cheese plate? Like a cheese plate?
Well, you think it's a cheese plate, but out comes a plate. And it's a circular plate with something basically the size of a large button. So, I mean, it'd be like the size of 2 toonies, if you understand what that is, like combined sort of that size.
Last time we talked toonies, you guys buried in the ice in the Olympics. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, so it's like half the diameter of a puck, half the circumference of a puck, and it's about like a stack of, say, 7 quarters thick, and this is your cheese plate in this cheese sauce. You pick it up and you take it with your fork and you put this thing in your half of it in your mouth. And it was the most orgasmic experience all of us had. We were actually going to try and barter with the waiter, our server, to see if we could get more of those and forget the sweets. It was so good. And it was made, the cheese was made by this lady who was a concert violinist. She's 69 years old. She retired from being a concert violinist. She moved into Sonoma and decided she was going to raise goats and make cheese. So it's this Gruyere goat cheese. That's all we talked about for the next 3 days. We just talked about the cheese. I mean,
talked about cheese.
We just talked about cheese, but that particular cheese.
We're talking about practice.
We're done with the food. It is interesting. Yeah. I agree.
So speaking of cheese, didn't the White House do a cheesy thing the other day?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Okay, so a couple of things. The White House has basically blamed the Eagles on backing out of this celebration. Now, of course, the White House is going to cite that 1,000 Eagles fans were going to attend because, yes, when the Eagles believed, the fans believed they were going, of course they were going to attend. It's not like they were going to attend without the Eagles there. I think that's a sadly mistaken misfact of all this. I also think that, Jeffrey Lurie did get quoted out in public about what he really felt about the president, and that, I think, probably irked him. And I think the president was waiting to pull out the rug because he knew that certain players didn't want to do it. But here's why he's doing it. It's not only because he was, disowned by the NFL and couldn't get a team.
No, it's that. I'm telling you, it's that.
That's only a part of it. The other part of it is, remember, Linda McMahon is in his cabinet. Vince McMahon's league is a year away, and they just announced the commissioner today.
Oliver Love.
I think he has been trying to put bad light on the NFL for the last 6 months to help out the XFL, which would also help out somebody in his cabinet, and maybe him if he gets a piece of a team.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I'm not trying to be political here, but we have a president who is a troll, who is a male chauvinist, and who is just an a-hole. And that's really anything that can distract and anything that he can do to get even for people who slighted him in the past, he will do. And nobody slighted him more than the NFL. He started a rival league. He tried to get into the NFL. He tried to buy the Buffalo Bills. I mean, how many times? And this thing was supposedly settled. The NFL with this half-ass thing that they did with the anthem. They really tried to placate him and keep his mouth shut. He doesn't want to keep his mouth shut. He wants to throw mud at the NFL, and this was the perfect way to do it. And I joked on Twitter.
When he's throwing mud at the NFL, it's helping the future rival league. It is.
Yeah, sure. I said on Twitter, I said, I'm sure that if the Washington Capitals win the Stanley Cup, they'll be invited to the White House because there's a lot of Russians on that team. So, I mean, it's really, honestly, it's gotten to the point where, like, I'm somebody who loved politics. I can't deal with it anymore. I can't talk about it anymore. I'm surprised I'm talking about it this much. It sickens me.
More sports related than political.
Yes, it is. But it also has its tentacles.
Oh, yeah.
In politics, because Pennsylvania, I mean, honestly, Pennsylvania is Pennsylvania is one of the reasons he won the election.
Right.
So to ostracize and to insult the fan base of the Philadelphia Eagles after they win a Super Bowl is not a smart thing politically, but I've never accused Donald Trump of being smart. So, yeah. So, I mean, I have to say this, though, to be a little bit, to make a little bit of comparison here. And I'm not going to mention the name of the place that we went to on Friday, Russ. Russ and a few friends we went to a restaurant in downtown Buffalo. It was great, but we ordered a Caesar salad, and Russ and I decided to split the Caesar salad.
That's funny.
And the plate comes out, and it's basically like they took two small heads of romaine lettuce, threw it on a grill, flipped it each side, put it on, poured a bunch of Caesar dressing, a few little croutons, and a variety of like heirloom tomatoes, and it looked like a sardine on the top of one of the
lucky sardine.
Yeah, Russ got the lucky sardine because I sure
that's a deconstructed Caesar salad. That's all the rage right now. It's really good.
It was good. Look, it was good. It was interesting that we shared it. But Mike really screwed me because he gave me the part with the stem, and I had to instantly cut off.
They both had stems. What are you talking about? It was two heads. It was two freaking heads. Are you kidding me?
Oh, I love Caesars that way.
I love Caesar salad, but I honestly, part of Caesar salad is, could you cut it? Could you make it a salad? Just don't give me a.
You don't know how to use a knife?
I think I insulted the waitress because I didn't want any, cracked pepper. But I'm not a pepper guy, so it's like.
Oh.
I know, Peter. Yeah, I know, Peter. Yeah.
Yes, I'm a pepper snob. Okay. Hello, Hockey World. By the way, we may be joined at some point by Kevin Allen of USA Today. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, June 5th, 2018.
Hey, I'm Peter Tessier, back from the warm climates of Napa, getting all sorts of dumb emails and stuff at the moment, but I'm back in Winnipeg and happy to be home.
I'm back from Washington. Geez, I got about 3 hours sleep. Happy to be on the show.
And your name is?
They know.
Captain America.
Russ needs no introduction.
Captain America.
And I'm Michael Lagello, who traveled up to QEW twice for 2 Calder Cup finals, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with the breaking news, and then we'll get into the game 4 from last night, because the breaking news is that Lou Lamoriello, the noted hatchet man, and I say that lovingly, has dropped the axe in Brooklyn. Hey, Kevin, we're live.
Yep. Sorry about that.
No problem. Just tilt your screen down a little bit. There you go. Perfect. We're just starting, and before talking about Game 4, we're going to talk about what the news that broke about a half hour ago, which is that Lou Lamoriello has dismissed Garth Snow as general manager and Doug Waite as head coach of the New York Islanders. So Lou is going to take over. Whoa.
Turn that up.
Wow. Lou is going to take over as general manager, and there will be a search for a new head coach. Now, I think Kevin is frozen here, so probably wait for him to reappear. But Russ, I mean, I'm a little surprised because it didn't happen in one fell swoop, but knowing Lou, I'm not surprised.
No, knowing Lou, I'm not surprised either. I did tell you guys that I felt like Doug Waite was gone all along, and so I thought that was a fait accompli, like that was going to happen no matter what. As far as Garth, look, he's gone, but he's not. It's going to be the same as like JFJ with the Leafs. One day, all of a sudden, he was sitting next to me at a Flyers game scouting. And so, the same might happen to Garth. The interesting thing is, I think Sheldon Keefe will be looked at, but I do think, like what Mike has been saying offline, is pretty accurate in that Dubas probably has future plans for him, and he probably won't go anywhere as a result. I do think Dave Tippett will be explored, but I still think Bruce Boudreau is the number one guy. If Barry Trotz leaves, goes to Minnesota because of Paul Fenton, and I think Boudreau would actually like be a breath of fresh air for the island with the New York media. He would be fantastic. And I think Lou would be all in on that. So I'm going Boudreau as the number one.
Hold on. I know I've been away here, but if Barry Trotz wins the Stanley Cup, he's leaving Washington.
Yes.
Yeah, he's leaving one way or the other. The way it sounds like they and it's not that they won't offer him a contract. It's that there's some animus between him and the general manager, and he wants to leave. And I'm assuming that he's got an opportunity to jump right into another job.
So did Boudreau get fired and I missed this too?
No, he hasn't yet. But with the change in general manager to Paul Fenton, who was assistant GM in Nashville and is long had a relationship with Barry Trotz, that's the talk right now that that's a distinct possibility. But what do you think of this whole situation in regards to Lou?
Well, I think it's fascinating, and as I said before we started the episode, is you brought me up to speed. I mean, I'm literally catching up with life here, and I turned off my phone basically while I was away. So it's kind of fun to come in fresh like that, where you just really have no idea what's been going on. It's interesting. They brought Lou in to be the executioner and the hatchet man, and do their thing, and you can take that on any way you want. Is it a cowardly thing? Is it a smart move for the ownership? Whatever the case is, Lou Lamoriello has a role. He has a reputation, and he's earned it by being cutthroat around doing things. And in business, you need someone like that. You need to have that element within your organization. You don't need to run your organization, but you do need it. The Islanders, as we have talked about for months and months, are a team that needed to do something different, to change, right? They are a team that absolutely needed a level of change and structure in them to get out of this constant doldrums that they're in. We'll lose that guy, and he just made his big swing with the axe, and he took down a big tree, as you were saying, Russ, too, like Doug Waite being collateral damage, and this is not surprising. There was never any certainty there.
That was happening without a Lou.
Yeah. Now Lou is in control, and we all know what happens when a new guy takes control of the GM role and everything. You got to have your coach, and your coach has to buy into what you're going to do in the short term and perhaps long term, right?
Well, Kevin,
and now Lou's got to find someone.
Kevin, I'm interested in your perspective on this. So with Lou Garth Snow and Doug Waite will still be part of the organization, but they've been relieved of their duties for GM and head coach. There was a lot of thought that Garth would stay on in some capacity, and he is, but there was some thought that he would stay on as general manager. But now we have Lou moving into the GM spot, and now maybe the organization looking for an assistant general manager and definitely looking for a head coach. What are your thoughts on this situation?
Well, frankly, Lou Lamoriello was the general manager even when he was the director of hockey operations. Even if Garth had stayed, it wasn't going to be, the type of situation that would have been desirable for Garth. So it's almost a better, situation for him just to be removed, from the process. But Lou runs his own ship, and he will probably be very aggressive in searching for a goaltender this summer. Mm-hmm. And I think I would rule out Barry Trotz ended up on Long Island. So
anything is possible.
Anything is possible, especially if he wins a cup, because why haven't they fired Bruce Boudreau by now?
Well, maybe because they still need to talk to Barry. Maybe he hasn't even decided.
Yeah. Well, I just think anything is possible. I wouldn't rule anything out. I do see the connection, but obviously between, and it's not just Fenton and Trotz, it's Leopold and Trotz,
right.
As well. Leopold was very comfortable in his days in Nashville, going down after games and sitting in the coach's office. Right. So there's a lot of reasons for that. But I actually thought Bruce Boudreau did an excellent job with Minnesota. Yeah. I don't think coaching was the problem there.
We never do. Most of the time we don't with him, Kev, but he's never been able to break through. And someone like Lou might look at him and say, you know what, I could be the guy that gets you through that if he shakes loose. You have to admit, Bruce Boudreau on the let loose on the New York media would be fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, he is a tremendous human being, always well loved by his players. It's like playing for your grandfather. Yeah. Again, I thought he did everywhere he's been. I thought he has done a good job. And I think the Game 7 things, it's almost become self-fulfilling, because I think the players start to worry about it because they're trying to win for him, because they like him, and I think it becomes a problem. But this is the best possible news for the New York Islanders in terms of.
Sorry, and if you look at Lou's history especially with the Devils, he's always hired veteran coaches.
Right.
Pat Burns.
Right.
Jacques Lemaire, Larry Robinson. Always he went with somebody with a vast deal of experience. And now I looked at the situation and looked at, a couple people in the Leaf organization who might be candidates, one being DJ Smith, who's a former Islander Memorial Cup winner and assistant to Babcock in Toronto. And the other one is Sheldon Keefe, who's the Marlies coach, who's going to be an NHL coach within a year or two. And I think they're candidates. I think they may get interviews, but I don't know whether Lou would go in that direction, because he's always gone with the veteran, experienced guy, and Tippett and Boudreau and Trotz are right along those lines.
That's my point exactly. I just wouldn't rule out any veteran guy. Because Lou.
Let me throw a name out.
Go ahead.
Go to Alain Vigneault.
I don't think so. I don't think Lou would get along with him.
I wouldn't completely rule him out. That's not his Lou's style of coach, though. He obviously likes defensive style coaches, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Plus he's headstrong. I think that's something where I don't think Lou would get some battles out of that. I don't think Lou wants battles in this job. We're going to assume this is Lou's last job, Yeah.
How about Michelle?
Lou doesn't. There are no battles with Lou, because he just basically says it's my way.
I know, but that's the problem with Alain Vigneault. He finds ways to create battles. He does.
I don't know that. He worked in Vancouver. He worked collaboratively with Mike Gillis, but with ownership, when they hired him, the Accolini family is our way or the highway. That's how they are.
I'll give you another name, and he's associated with USA Hockey. So how about Dan Bylsma?
Yeah, I thought about that, but I don't know. For some reason, I don't feel like that's a fit either, and I don't know why. But it doesn't.
I don't know if Dan Bylsma would want to be in a New York market. I think he got sort of shell shocked in Pittsburgh a little bit, when probably would want a smaller market. That would be my feel.
He went to Buffalo, right? How do you do there?
What's
that's a way smaller market.
Here's a question though. Like, how long, like, can Baalsma go without getting a job before suddenly he gets pushed off to the side?
Before he starts getting the Ron Wilson treatment, he hasn't coached in long enough.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. It can only go another year or two.
Right.
Yeah. So if he wants to stay in the game. Now, the interesting thing, and this is just supposition, and I don't know how much people buy into it, but a lot of speculation was that Doug Waite was a favorite of John Tavares, and that now that Waite has been fired, that decreases the chance of Tavares re-signing with the Islanders. I'm not sure if I buy that. I don't know if that means I think who they hire as a head coach will be a big factor, and I'm assuming they're going to hire somebody before the draft, so that will be a factor for Tavares in a decision. But Kevin, what do you think of that, or what do you?
Well, it's an interesting theory, and I know Doug Waite to be full disclosure here. I've known him, pretty well for a long time, and I'm a big fan of his. And not sure what happened last season, but obviously last season they kind of fell apart. But he reluctantly went into coaching and then really enjoyed it. And I think Tavares likes Doug Waite because he knows he's a good hockey guy and understands the game and understands what it takes to be a top performer in the NHL. But I don't know that will be. I think the weight of having Lou Lamoriello as a general manager would trump the fact that he lost Doug Waite. I just think there is. Lamoriello has a tremendous reputation among players. Like everybody believes that he knows what he's doing. If Tavares ask anybody who played for him, they're going to say that Lou was fair to everybody. He's good to work for, even though he has a reputation as being kind of a grumpy guy, he's really not. Like, players like him. They like playing for him. So I would think that would supersede any negative aspect of losing Doug Waite. And I can understand why Tavares would be upset. Doug Waite's a good guy.
I agree. But here's the thing, and this is probably the toughest part of the sell, even for Lou, to Tavares. So even going into this year, let's say you get your goalie, let's say Tavares stays, let's say you even get Kovalchuk. You still have problems on that team. You've got aging players, Andrew Ladd, Johnny Boychuk. Like, there's a lot of problems that you can't possibly solve in one off season.
And the goaltending.
That's the thing. Well, the goaltender, I already guessed that he would have one. So, but the thing is, that he's going to get one, and you're going to trade one or both of those first round picks to do it.
Let me ask you this, Russ. But how many perfect teams are out there?
No, there's not a perfect team, but I'm saying.
But my point is that his options out there, every option that he's going to look at, they're going to have problems.
The team that's going to win the Stanley Cup is far from being a perfect team. I've been saying
that's exactly right. So I don't know that it's going to be. That sort of issue. Like, I don't think it's really going to come down to, does he think that Lou can fix this thing quickly? I think it's just a matter of, and the Islanders do have a collection of talent.
Well, they do, but I do think he's going to want it to be fairly quick, because I think otherwise, why stay? He could go to a winner now. And
where's he going to go? Tell me where he's going to go, Russ. That's a winner now.
Okay, I mean, if he goes to
San Jose,
let's say he goes to San Jose, which I do think is the number one choice at the moment, they could win right away. They have a goalie, they have defense, they have Burns, maybe even Thornton comes back really cheap.
Are they in the top 5 teams in the NHL?
No,
but nobody. Then he won't be able to go anywhere that'll be a top 5 team. But even with the scenario I gave you, is not a guarantee the Islanders even make the playoffs.
But how do you even judge that? Let's look at it like the New Jersey Devils or the Colorado Devils.
If it goes to the Devils, they clearly could be a playoff team. They already are. And so the Devils would be that other team that definitely can compete right away.
No, my point about the Devils is that a year ago they looked like a disaster.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about them.
Shiro had been making moves all along that had been helping, and then that was his big off season. I'm saying you can't do it all in one off season. And Tavares, I don't know if he's going to want that.
Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, I mean, you can switch things pretty fast. I mean, Look at this. The Winnipeg Jets, now a different team, but a lot of talent there. And the Islanders have a lot of talent. They went from missing the playoffs by a lot to coming 2 points from being the top team in the NHL in one season. You know what changed for them? They got some goaltending. Give the Islanders some goaltending and see what happens.
Well,
and that, that's what Lou's got to do. He's got to find some goaltending and give the rest of the roster some stability. Yes, there's some duds on there. Yes, Andrew Ladd's making too much money, but it's not impossible to take a team that underperformed and fix some of the key problems and get them into contention. And that might be all he has to do to convince Tavares. And as you guys have said, players have faith in this guy. He's respected. They believe him.
That's the interesting thing is the goaltending question. We talked about it yesterday on the show, Kevin, is that, they have 2 first-round picks, I believe 12 and 13, and Ack was told by someone that it's possible that they could trade both firsts, which I don't see a goaltender that is considered available right now that would be worthy of giving up 2 first-round picks for, unless his name is Carey Price. But like we scoured our minds in terms of potential available goaltenders. I've been saying Corey Crawford. I know Corey Schneider came up. I mean, who other than Grubauer, who else is out there?
Well, I put Carter Hutton actually 6th on my free agent list because there are 3 teams looking for a goalkeeper right now that I'm aware of. And there's always somebody that you're not counting on. But,
sure.
Obviously the Carolina Hurricanes are looking for a goalie. The Detroit Red Wings looking for a goalie, and the New York Islanders are looking for a goalie. Grubauer and Hutton are probably going to get 2 of those positions. So there's one team is still looking for a goalie that's been not identified yet. I would find it startling if the Islanders gave up 1 or 2 first-round draft picks to try to get a goalie, and really there's no one out there. So
let's say they get Carter Hutton, they really have to beef up their defense. I mean, if you look at them, Calvin DeHaan's a free agent for one thing, and they barely have a top 4 anymore.
I mean, I agree with all that, but you're discounting the fact that there is a sort of a chaos theory that always goes with the NHL that allows teams to, make dramatic rises. Like we already talked about Colorado, New Jersey. Peter just brought up Winnipeg, how quickly they moved up, all because they're goaltending. Like if the Islanders would have had better goaltending this season, what would they have been? They would have. I mean,
they would have gotten closer, but they still
Look at what goaltending did to the Oilers. It's the same thing, right? Like,
yeah. Cam Talbot played pedestrian, and they crapped out. And when he was almost Superman, they made the second round of the playoffs.
Right. Jim Rutherford has given me 2 of my all-time favorite quotes. He said that trying to win the Stanley Cup for 2 years in a row is like climbing Mount Everest in March and then September going to that mountain again and looking up and saying, "Oh my God, we got to do it again." That's how hard it is. That was one. But my other favorite coach is I once asked him whether a guy was a good coach, and he said, "Who's his goalie?" And the point of that obviously is just the point we're trying to make here, that you have some decent teams that could do well. I mean, look at the Vegas Golden Knights.
Carter Hutton leading them into the playoffs. I can't.
Well,
I mean, that's fair. I mean, Carter Hutton has been a backup his entire career,
and he is 32 years old. That's the thing.
But he played well last season, and so
did Aaron Dell. Are we going to say Aaron Dell could turn you into a playoff team?
No, we don't.
They may not be the right
one. Here's the difference. Here's the difference between me and you, Russ. I think it's possible the Islanders could make the playoffs the next year, just because that's just the way it works in the NHL, and you just think they're just not good enough to do it, even with minor changes. And I think they could. I've mentioned his name on a couple previous shows, and I know that because I'm Toronto centric, but on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to a 32-year-old goaltender who's been a backup in the NHL for a number of years but had a great year in Hutton, a guy like Garrett Sparks, who's 24 years old, who's won the AHL Vezina and is probably gonna could win a Calder Cup and had an amazing year. That might be a goaltender that teams, because he's low cost, might be willing to take a shot on. And
as a backup,
I don't know about that as a backup.
He's not going to be a starter.
I'm not. I'm just saying. I think it's a possibility.
Russ, they just need to find a solution. The franchise starter is a long ways off, and that's not. See, that's where I think we get hung up on.
Nabokov was a solution, and they didn't do anything with him, and he was a pretty good solution.
No. I know what you're saying, but that's the past. This is Lou's team now. It's his problem.
Okay, but the team isn't going to magically transform in one summer. That's what I'm saying.
Right. I'm not saying it's going to magically transform. I think it's going to transform because you've got a guy who's got a proven track record of doing things, who can make something happen. Can he do it again in a short time? That's the question, but that's definitely what he has to do. That's his aim. Like, that's his goal. He's not there to axe everyone.
This team that has made the playoffs 3 times in 11 years, that's been the aim all along. It's been the aim since Mike Milbury, and then Mike Milbury handed it off to Garth Snow, and it got worse.
Right. And the point, but that's their.
It was a huge upgrade.
That's different, though. You're comparing Mike Milbury to Lou Lamoriello.
No, I'm not. What I'm saying.
But you did in a way. You said, "Well, Mike Milbury, that's the team's name," and you cited those 2 names. We're talking about Lou and what Lou has to do.
It's a big job.
Ross, if it's repetitive, it's the same problem.
See, I've already taken the leap of faith. I've already put Tavares on the roster. What if he's not? Then it's more chaos.
Well, right, and I think what we're getting at here is the idea that by having Lou and having his pedigree, his trust, his reputation, and everything, this is their best chance to keep Tavares in the fold.
Right, and they still may not be able.
But Lou
outline the other challenges that he's faced with. Just because the challenges exist doesn't mean it's Lou's going to fail at doing them.
Okay,
it doesn't mean he's going to succeed either.
But the bones of the Leafs were much better than the bones of the Devils that Lou left over when he left. Like, the Devils were underperforming the last couple of years of Lou when he left there, and he did a nice job in Toronto, no question, but they had really good things to start with, and I believe better things than what the Islanders have. I do.
Well, I mean, I think, if what you're saying is the Islanders are not going to be the best team in the league next year, I think we all agree with that.
I know that.
I think all Peter and I are saying is it's not unthinkable that they could make the playoffs next year.
Yeah.
I think it's possible, but I think he's got to solve probably 2 or 3 problems that are big. And Tavares is number 1, and the goaltending is number 2, and he's got free agents and elderly players on defense, and he's got to rectify that situation before I think you can really even address the possibility. Remember, they're in a division with Columbus, Pittsburgh, Washington, the Rangers. I mean, the Rangers may be going through the rebuild. That is an extremely tough division. So right now, I mean, it looks to me that they're relegated to a potential wild card spot. I don't think they're a top 3 team even, but that's.
I would agree with that too. But I mean, we've just seen it happen too often in this league that teams end up being better than you think because
the Islanders only have 13 players under contract. That's way less than what the Leafs had when Lou took over. Way less.
Right. But when Lou took over, Russ, that was after they finished in dead last, and they were and Lou facilitated the Phaneuf deal. They were still in the process of rebuild. Here, I think he actually has. Remember, he got Austin Matthews, but drafted him. But that was all the legwork in terms of them losing was pretty much done. So I mean, I think he's got a challenge in front of him. He's got a lot of things to do. It's going to be they're going to be the most interesting team.
They have 7 UFAs and 5 RFAs. This is a bigger job. It is.
Yeah.
But
it's a big job, but
it's not a massive job.
Oh, I think it's massive. I do.
It's a big job, but RFAs are RFAs. You're going to deal with them one way or the other. The UFAs, well, I mean, who are you? Let's look at them right now. So Calvin DeHaan, Thomas Hickey, Dennis Seidenberg, Wagner, Kuhlman, and Tavares.
Kuhlman's already going to the KHL. The other 2 are in.
I mean, exactly. Like, I mean, these aren't
replacements, Peter. It's not going to be the easiest thing to do.
Well, they have enough young guys in the organization.
I don't think it's that difficult, and teams go through this.
Well, all right.
It's what magnifies that problem is he's got to figure out goaltending, and he's got to shore up his defense and Tavares. Those are your 3 things plus all the RFAs.
Okay,
and that's your 3 things.
Didn't figure out Buffalo in 1 year either, did he?
No.
What's that?
No,
Jason Cotterill didn't figure out Buffalo in 1 year either, did he?
No. But
No.
let's move on. I want to get to the Stanley Cup. Obviously, we had a rather one-sided score, although early on in the game, and Russ and I were going back and forth, Kev, on our mutual text with Eck, and saying Vegas started out really well. They hit a couple posts, they had opportunities, but they didn't take advantage of those opportunities, and they really needed to really get a jump on Washington. And once it was still even after those chances, Washington gets the first goal, and then it was a wave. So I picked Vegas. I have hope still, but I don't know. It doesn't look too good right now.
Yeah, I mean, to me, what it's really sort of come down to, like, for the first 6 or 7 minutes, the Vegas Golden Knights did exactly what they wanted to do. They put a little pressure on the Capitals. They were the same team that they were during the regular season. They were relentless. They went hard. They used their skating, but they just couldn't finish. And when I compare the two teams now over the first 4 games, what really stands out to me is the top players on the Washington Capitals, the Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Carlson, Holtby. These guys are all standing out. The best players have been the best players for Washington. Plus, they have guys like in the bottom leagues like Pelly Smith that are playing well. And Vegas has guys that just haven't sort of risen up, and there's been no flag carrier. Yeah. Nobody to lean on. The top line has not. They've had 1 goal in the last 3 games, and that's it's hard to win in a tight checking game unless your top players are really playing at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, Washington. Go ahead, Peter.
No, okay. I was going to say this series is completely about the fact that Marc-Andre Fleury, well, he's fallen off a cliff. He finally got so high with the save percentage that it was like even he couldn't believe it, and he was admiring the view from way up top above every other goaltender in the history of playoff goaltending. And then he took a wrong step. So they're like, it's not a slight at him. It's just that's reality. It's fine. Like what he was doing was unsustainable. There's no possible way you could sustain that for 16 wins. Right. In 4 different series and doing what you're doing. That's the difference.
Well, I think it's sorry, Peter.
No, I mean that's just what everyone was waiting to happen. Is like, when does this stop? Because it was astronomical, and the shooting percentage too. Like,
well, I think it's unsustainable for a goaltender to have a 940 save percentage or 950 or whatever it was throughout the playoffs. But the one thing I've noticed over the last couple games is that Vegas's defense has really slipped. I mean, Shea Theodore on that giveaway on the Smith-Pelly goal in Game 3. They're allowing Washington, and Washington had some really good puck luck. There were a couple. The Smith-Pelly goal in Game 4, another goal where Oshie kicks it up to his stick on the goal. They're making passes cross ice that shouldn't even get through. And I think the difference is that Vegas's defense is not blocking as many shots and stopping as many passes as Washington is. Washington's blocking multiple shots. Orpik blocked, I think, 6 yesterday. Niskanen is blocking shots. Right now, Washington stepped up their defensive game, and I think Vegas's defense has sort of declined a little bit.
I mean, I think with the exception of the one bad game recently, Washington's defense has been stepped up for a while. I look at this and I say that Shea Theodore led all skaters in ice time. Now, it's because they had a lot of power plays, but it's still too much for a young guy. Alex Tuch was second on that team. When you're relying on young guys like that and you're down in the game, that's never a good scenario. And so that has to change. When Vegas is playing from behind, it's bad. The Capitals have had the lead the last 3 games, and when they have the lead, they do have the skill to make things worse. Like when it's 2-0, I know we all say, hey, it's like, 3-0 is one of the worst leads in hockey, but it isn't that bad of a lead when you have the talent that the Capitals do and can keep pouring it on. To their credit, they didn't try and play keep away when they had a lead. They kept playing offense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was a really smart move. Braden Holtby, like, this is the most impenetrable we've ever seen him. He looks like a robot out there. He looks like he's having an out-of-body experience. He almost, like, even when he is just drinking water in between a break. He's not looking at anything in particular. Like, I've never seen this guy this locked in, and it's a big deal. And I'll tell you, I was impressed with Ovechkin yesterday in the locker room. I wrote about it on Sportsology. He couldn't have been like any more somber after a win and saying, we didn't play our best game. We've got to look on the tape. We could do better. We've got a couple days to do it. Like, this is a guy now that realizes for all that he's worked for, and he definitely wanted to get that Olympic gold that he never had a chance to get. This is it. He knows this is his shot, and he's holding his team to a higher standard, which I think he always did, but I don't think he ever did it to this degree. And I think it's really great. And I think the example he's setting is terrific, considering Kuznetsov is his next highest guy now, him or Oshie, and Kuznetsov really looks up to him. I think he is getting the leadership out of these other guys, and Vegas has a problem now. They do.
Well, Vegas has a problem simply because, I mean, I want to go back to the first point about the defense. This was happening in the Jets series, and the Jets were getting better shot locations, more shot frequencies, but there was this brick wall called Marc-Andre Fleury. Right. And, you know, great goaltending masked a lot of problems. The Vegas defense was getting exposed. It's just that he was stopping everything. And, you know, in a few games in the San Jose series, he was getting exposed. And, you know, but Russ, the point I think that's really important here, not to miss, is while I'm sort of criticizing the Golden Knights here, Washington has done a masterful job of changing some things to exacerbate the problems their defense is having. And how many times have we seen shots from the Golden Knights go in, and then all of a sudden it's in the back of the net because of a goofy rebound or a bounce or something like that? When you're blocking the shots, they're not going anywhere.
Right.
And few teams, the Jets didn't do that well. They let them take those shots. Next thing you know, it was down low, chaos, boom, it's behind Hellebuck. And that's one of the things that I think you point out that's really important. That tactical change by the Capitals has absolutely affected some of the way the Vegas has gone around the net. They're not getting the same looks.
But here's the weird thing, and then you can answer it. Here's the weird thing, and I don't know if Kevin heard it. I understand that Vegas had really good moments in that game, especially early in the first and other times, and it just seems like a lot of the stat and analytics guys were trying to find reasons why Vegas is still in this and could still win it and everything else. And I'm not saying they can't, but I'm saying when you finally have a score of 4-0, I don't really care what you're telling me that the other team is doing right, because it's still 4-0.
Kevin, the one thing that I picked up on, and, you know, you expect it to get a little mean when it comes to, the Stanley Cup final and wanting to achieve the ultimate prize. But I thought, like, the hit on Oshie by McNabb, the stuff with Wilson and Reeves, and the after the game. I mean, you know, it's not like 1970s, bedlam, but I think it's getting a little frisky between these two teams.
Well, for sure. And I think some of it is, frustration, and some of it's tactics, Vegas, kind of saying, look, we believe we're still in this, we're going to, fight to the end type stuff. And, there's a lot of reasons why, but I found it was interesting is it boiled over at the end, but in the locker room, you hardly heard anything about that. Like, it was already over. They were already focused. Like, the point that Russ made about Ovechkin is right on the money, because he's been like this now, is particularly for most of the playoffs, but in the last two series in particular, like, it's really clear that he realizes this is the best mix, not so much the best team, but the best mix of players he's had. Like, they have all of the elements they need, to be successful in the postseason. And, everybody's on the same page. Everybody understands their roles. Nobody is, and I think what's lost in all this too is Kuznetsov's performance has been unbelievable. Like, 4 assists again yesterday. Like, we were talking after the game, there was some writers about, it seemed like this was the Conn Smythe Trophy was Ovechkin's for sure.
Right.
If Washington won the Stanley Cup. I'm not so sure now. You know,
I agree with you.
yeah, Kuznetsov has just played so well in the final, and not that I mean Ovechkin's been great too. Like, you know, and so you have to sort of balance out the intangibles of Ovechkin's leadership, you know, with all the offense that Kuznetsov. And you know, there was a play last night. I was watching him, Kuznetsov, and you know, he goes and he rubs out the other center that he was playing against, and you know, just playing a great defensive role. I mean, he just pushed him against the board and, you know, rendered him useless. And I thought, wow, like he's just playing such a complete game. So I vote on that, Conn Smythe, and I'm struggling right now about how
you struggling.
I thought Ovechkin would get veteran dispensation for the Conn Smythe because he's been around for so long, and because this is, you know, he's finally achieved the ultimate prize. Plus, I don't know how anxious the NHL and Gary Bettman will be to have Kuznetsov balancing the Conn Smythe trophy and doing this all on the ice. I have a feeling he might do that.
Well, you know, it's not. I mean, it is different, but it's similar to the Kessel versus Crosby debate.
Yes.
You know, because the people that you know, wanted Crosby pointed out that the leadership needed to be factored in, and there's no doubt this is Ovechkin's team, not Kuznetsov's team, and Kuznetsov pays homage to Ovechkin all the time in that regard. And you know, history shouldn't be taken into account, but it does interfere in your head when you think about this. And you know, if you're not thinking hard about this, then you're doing the voting process a disfavor. So you know, I've been thinking long and hard.
If has an amazing next game and they clinch it and he has a shutout, that's going to clog it up even more. If John Carlson gets a bunch more points, that could clog it up again. Yeah. Like, it's just, it's not settled. That's for sure.
Yeah, no.
Now, a couple things here. I wanted to touch on something that Eck wrote this morning, and Peter, it has to do with the team that I cover and the team that you cover.
Yes.
And I want to get the opinion of everybody else as well. It was essentially that there's a source that he was told that the Leafs are, you know, the Leafs are obviously looking for help on defense. The name they've been connected with this Hanifin. Apparently, you know, Vancouver may be willing to give up more for Hanifin. Although I was on a radio show on Friday from Vancouver, and them giving up the number 7 overall pick for Hanifin, to me and to most of the people that were talking and listening, was a non-starter, because, you know, they're a rebuilding team, and there are defensemen, as Russ will tell you, in the draft who are probably as good offensively as Noah Hanifin that they can get at number 7. But the name that Eck is talking about obviously is Jacob Trouba, and the name that popped up, and this is like old home week here, Peter. We're talking about names that we've been talking about for a year or two. Jake Gardner and the rights to James Van Riemsdyk. Now, the thing that I question about this, and I'm not questioning Eck, but whoever his source is, what the hell would the Winnipeg Jets want with JVR? That's what unless it's to trade.
I don't know.
I
don't know where he plays, but the only reason I don't think the rights to JVR have any significant value other than.
I'm muting you, Kevin, just for the minute.
Have any sort of significant value other than a low draft pick for any team that wants them. I just don't understand it. Unless there's a reason that there's another trade, and getting those in that way from the Leafs would make sense. I don't understand it.
Well, his explanation was that there are a number of teams, some of the New York teams, maybe Philadelphia, Winnipeg was in the list, that they would want the jump on the gun to July 1st, you know, maybe before at the draft, maybe before the 5-day window. And that's plausible because we've seen that before, but I don't see that being valued so much that it would be a factor in a Jacob Trouba deal, unless
if they want a winger and they're trading basically a guy who is going to be looked at as one of their top 2 franchise defensemen going forward, and they want a winger and they think the rights to JVR is what's important, we got a bigger issue to talk about with the Winnipeg Jets, right? You if you're trading Trouba, you're talking about Kapanen. Pick one of them, right? That's the level we're talking at here. Kapanen, Marner. Not that I'm saying you should trade Trouba for Marner. I'm just saying that's where the ask or whatever is it's Nylander. Like, it's going to go into one of those guys, and that's where the bargaining chip is. because they all meet the age profile. They all meet that. So if the rights for JVR are something that teams are looking for, never rule it out, because the NHL is an unpredictable league, and way some GMs think and what they try to get creative and do. And that's the other thing, right? I think what we saw at the trade deadline with how the Penguins got Brassard and the Vegas Knights took Reeves and all this thing because it was believed it was keeping Brassard from going to the Jets.
Right.
There's GMs are prepared to be creative about things. And if there's, what I don't understand with the rights thing is if you're XYZ team and you want to get a jump on the rights to JVR, why don't you just offer Dubas a decent draft pick and see what he says? And if he says no, there's two reasons. One, he wants him, keep him away from your team for whatever reason. But if he wanted to do that, he would have done that already. So it's just an odd one, that's for sure.
The problem is, Kevin, is that the Leafs missed their window to move JVR for anything significant a year ago or at the deadline, and now with it when he's less than a month away from unrestricted free agency, at most you get a 4th or 5th round draft pick. I don't see really his rights having a ton of value. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't think that that's even remotely plausible. I think that Van Riemsdyk, his rights may be dealt, but just as you said, it will be just for a 4th or 5th round pick to get a chance to talk to him early. I think he's going to play the field. He's going to be one of the most popular free agents in the marketplace, yes, because he's not $8 million and he's a consistent goal scorer, and they're very hard to find. I think the Devils, I wouldn't even rule out the Penguins. They don't really have the cap space to make that work, but, Rutherford has a way of making things work. I mean, there's just going to be so many teams in there. So, and the other thing is I just can't imagine a team with the Winnipeg Jets that has reached the point where they're a contender who's going to trade their shutdown defenseman. Like, why would they do that?
Yeah, and especially Peter and Russ, if you have anything on this, especially in the wake of what Peter you mentioned last week before your trip to Napa, regarding Trouba wanting to being open to signing a new deal with them. If that's what's being sold publicly, maybe that's not what's going on privately. Maybe he's saying, I'll be willing to stay if you pay me top dollar, and they don't want to pay him top dollar. If that's the case, then maybe hit this situation. And, a guy like Gardner, who's under contract for another year at $4 million makes sense to them. And maybe it'd be easier to re-sign him because he's from Minnesota, just like Dustin Byfuglien is. So, it wouldn't be a stretch to re-sign him. But I don't know. I agree with Kevin. I don't know why Winnipeg would give up Trouba now if he's willing to stay, unless they can't pay him what he wants.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. It doesn't make any sense. But we all know the Leafs have long had feelings for Trouba in acquiring that. He fits what they need so well.
Yep.
A number one right side defenseman. And there's long been rumors that there's been a conversation here, or been a conversation there. But it's been murmurs and super quiet because you have the two most silent GMs about anything talking, if they even talked. And, we may not find out that until both Kevin Allen, my God, Kevin Cheveldayoff and Lou Lamoriello are both 6 feet under and it's on their headstones. Yes, we talked about Jacob Trouba, right? Like, that's just how it goes with those two. Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, no problem. I would like to run.
Don't want
to. So hire me as your assistant.
Yeah. So, that's the kind of situation we're dealing with and finding that out. But if the Leafs look at where they are right now and they say, this should be our number one priority,
right?
Then we're going to hear some crazy stuff about Jacob Trouba because they should be doing that.
Right.
Kyle Dubas should be working a way to find a solution for that problem, and Jacob Trouba should be one of his top 3 targets.
Right.
Now, we're probably just, probably hearing one of the murmurs of goofiness that always comes through things, and that's part of the process, right?
You know what? Here's the thing, though, Peter, and it's going to get tough in Winnipeg simply because, like, RFA-wise this year, you got Trouba, you have You have Hellebuck. Hellebuck had an amazing year, so he's not coming cheap anymore. And then next year you've got Line and Kyle Connor. Like this is, when you start projecting out now, you do have to figure out who you're not going to keep out of that, and it could be Tyler Myers. And Tyler Myers is a UFA year too.
Yeah. The thing with Tyler Myers is there's a fairly large section of fans, and fans don't make the decisions, but who are ready to cut bait with him. And I think there's reason to do that. Will the organization cut bait with him, given what he went through last year, the support? They use that as sort of as part of their selling point on being in Winnipeg, is this is an organization that cares. So see them cut bait like that this offseason would be surprising. But given the way Toby Enstrom's left the team and some of the animosity there, maybe they're prepared to be a little harder, because now they have depth in the organization and they have to make the hard decisions about salary cap space, because it's a reality now. And I could see Tyler Myers being moved. I could see Mason being moved, but I think that's
at $4 million. They're going to have to eat some of Mason's deal.
Yeah, absolutely. But I could see it. It doesn't mean it'll happen.
Yeah.
But if the cap goes up just enough, I think there's a possibility. And one of the names you could probably see moved later on, and it doesn't have to happen this year, but is Matthew Perreault.
Yeah.
Who has value, $4.1 million. There's a possibility there. Like, there's ways to make this work, but it's not without sacrifice.
Kevin, just to finish out the show here, Peter was just talking about the salary cap, and from the stuff that came out this morning regarding the fact that the escrow amount withheld is going to be, I think it's less than 10%, and the projections from Gary Bettman that the cap is going to be anywhere from 78 to 82. I'm assuming it's going to probably land in the middle at 80, which would be a $5 million bump for every team. I think that's going to generate a lot of business in terms of free agency. And I look at this class and, to be honest, other than Tavares and Van Riemsdyk and Carlson, it really stinks. It's not a good class at all.
But it's going to help in the trades.
Yes.
That helps. There's a lot of guys that could be dealt because of, contract situations, starting with, Erik Karlsson, what happens with Pacioretty. As Ekman Larson, they're going to get him signed now. The Coyotes really believe they're going to get it done. They've clearly offered him a fair contract. It just comes down to whether he wants to stay there or not. But if they can't get him signed, if he just is honest with them and says, "Look, I'd rather test the market just because I don't know what's going to happen here in Arizona,"
right.
Then he would be better. And that's where that bumping is really going to help because I think it's going to allow some teams to fit some players in that they wouldn't have been able to do without that increase. I did want, at the risk of sounding like Ack, but I just did get a text.
Oh no, a three-way trade. Here we go.
No three-way trade, but a text of a guy who is pretty wired in who told me, he might be watching the show is why I brought this up, that he's been told that DJ Smith will be the Islanders coach.
Okay.
That's what I mentioned, and I think that if that happens,
I think that's excellent.
If that happens, then I think there's a distinct possibility that Sheldon Keefe moves up from the Marlies and becomes an NHL assistant because, the one thing, he was a coach in the OHL at Sault Ste. Marie. And if he wins a Calder Cup, he really has nothing else to prove at the AHL level unless they want to have him continue to develop their young players. That's always a possibility. But if DJ Smith takes the Islanders job, then I think Sheldon Keefe could move up to.
One last thing, because it's a note, and then I got to go. Martin Kaut went home early from the combine. Jiffy Vitek is reporting on Twitter that he had a heart issue and he had to undergo minor surgery. There was a chance he could have been like a bottom of the first round guy. Now he might be a bottom of the second or even into the third because of this. So
that'll scare some teams away. But
teams, even though he's a talent.
Okay, thanks, guys. Kevin, thank you very much. I'm assuming you're going to Vegas, so safe travels. Thanks, Peter. Thank you, Russ. For the panel, I'm Michael Agel. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.